Hi there, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is EJ, and in this video, we will be talking about some of the most famous literary personalities whose names would oftentimes appear in the board exam for teachers. Now, my dear friends, let me share my screen. Okay. Now, while I'm sharing my screen, let me remind you that the literature part of the exam is probably one of the most difficult parts of it. So you need to pay attention. Okay? Now, let's start. Famous literary personalities. The first one that we are going to discuss would have to be our dear friend William Shakespeare. And he is one of the most famous writers of all time. He's famous for his plays and his sonnets. And number three, the themes of his works are oftentimes about love and equality. Now, let's have the first bullet first. Most famous writer of all time. Now, the question is, Mr. Padilla, do you agree with that statement? Well, I would have to say, uh, not completely, because I guess fame is not measurable. Like, how can we measure fame, right? Pero, ba't ko nilagay sa bullet na ito? Well, primarily because in the exam, lumabas ang tanong na ito, guys. The question was, who is considered as the most famous writer of all time? And in that particular question, the answer is William Shakespeare. So probably mga kaibigan, yung gumawa ng exam, gumawa ng tanong na ito, iniisip niya na talagang si Shakespeare ang pinakasikat, which I think has basis. Why, you may ask? Because I think in most countries who would have English as their subject, Shakespeare is always part of the curriculum. So maybe that is one of the basis why the one who wrote the question thought of Shakespeare being the most famous. Diba? Now, how about bullet number two? He is famous for his plays and his sonnets. Now, this is true. I guess Shakespeare was able to write a lot of plays and a lot of sonnets. But in the exam, my dear friends, three plays would oftentimes appear. Number one, the very famous Romeo and Juliet. Number two, we also have Hamlet. And very recently, before the pandemic, I think that was the exam of 2017, my dear friends. Uh, Merchant of Venice was oftentimes asked. And if you want to know more about those plays, by all means, visit my YouTube channel and search for my analysis of those three plays. Ayan. Now, also, he's famous for his sonnets. And in the exam, my dear friends, from the year 2005 up until before the pandemic, my friends, only two sonnets of Shakespeare would oftentimes appear in the exam. Now, what are these? Number one is sonnet number 18, and number two is sonnet number 29. Sonnet number 18 goes like this, like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Yeah, that's it. That is sonnet number 18. And the other one is sonnet number 29. When in disgrace with fortune in men's eyes, I alone beweep my outcast state. Yes. So those are the two sonnets that would oftentimes appear in the board exam for teachers. And if you want to know more about it, I also have a video about these sonnets. Ayan. Now, Mr. Padilla, what if in our exam, there's a different sonnet to be featured? Well, by all means, it's going to be easy as long as you know what a sonnet is. Now, what is a sonnet? Well, my dear friends, the answer is very easy. A sonnet is a poem with 14 lines. But what makes a sonnet a Shakespearean sonnet? Now, here are the elements of a Shakespearean sonnet. And by the way, I think you must take note of this, that Shakespearean sonnets are also called English sonnets because technically there are two famous types of sonnets. We have the English sonnets or Shakespearean sonnets, and we also have Italian sonnets or Petrarchan. So if you want to know more about that, then please search for my video on YouTube about the different types of sonnets. So ayan. Well, anyway, mga kaibigan, tanong, Mr. Padilla, paano namin magagamit ang information ito sa pagsagot sa exam? Well, very simple, my dear friends. There are instances wherein the questions are very trivial. Halimbawa, may isang tula, may isang tula, and then ang tanong ay, who wrote the poem given above? Now, the problem is, what if you have not read that poem before? What if that poem is something new to you? So how would you answer that? Well, my dear friends, knowing the structure of the poem would give you clues. So first step, Halimbawa may tula, di ba? Basahin mo. O siguro ang gawin mo muna, bilangin mo muna yung lines niya. Kung 14 lines ang tula, it means it is a sonnet. 40% ang sagot niyan si Shakespeare. But of course, you are not content with 40%. You need to know more. You need to be sure if that poem is by William Shakespeare. So my dear friends, look at the elements of a Shakespearean sonnet. Number one, a Shakespearean sonnet is a sonnet or a poem with 14 iambic pentameter lines. Now, when we say iambic, it means it is a succession of two syllables, unstressed and stressed. And when we say pentameter, penta means five. It means in each line of a Shakespearean sonnet, there are five sets of an iambic foot. Ayan. So, Mr. Padilla, parang medyo mahirap pa rin ata yun. Well, let's do math. Pag iambic, meron tayong dalawang syllables, unstressed and stressed. And then merong 5 sets nun. It means 5 times 2 equals 10. Tama ba ako? 10 nga ba? Yes, 10, mga kaibigan. It means a Shakespearean sonnet would have 10 syllables per line. Let's try. Let's try sonnet number 18. Count with me. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? 10. First line. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Second line, 10. So, my dear friends, if there are 10 syllables per line, William Shakespeare is the answer, around 60%. Right? Now, Mr. Padilla, that is not enough. We want more. Gusto ko mas sure pa tayo. Then by all means, look at the stanzas. Mga kaibigan, an English sonnet would have 3 quatrains and 1 couplet. And when we say quatrains, ibig sabihin, isang stanza may 4 na linya. So, 3 sets na tiga-4 na linya at isang set ng couplet. And when we say couplet, 2 lines. And my dear friends, sometimes we call it the heroic couplet in a Shakespearean sonnet because it encapsulates or it summarizes the entire sonnet. So again, pag may 3 quatrains at may isang couplet, then it must have been William Shakespeare. Right? Now, para mas maganda dyan mga kaibigan, tignan mo rin kung ano ang tema ng tula. If the theme of the poem concerns love, equality, ganyan, so sure ka na that Shakespeare is the answer. Right? So there you have it, William Shakespeare. Now, ano ba yung mga famous lines na lumalabas sa mga plays ni Shakespeare? Well, sa Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question. Tapos yung sa Merchant of Venice, yung mercy, about mercy, the quality of mercy is not strained, mga ganyan. So if you want to know more about that, please visit my YouTube channel and search for, my videos about Hamlet and the Merchant of Venice. So ayan, William Shakespeare. Now let's have the next one. The next one, my dear friends, is Geoffrey Chaucer. And he is considered as one of the pioneers of English literature. And he wrote the Canterbury Tales. Now, my dear friends, remember this. The Canterbury Tales is a frame story. And when we say frame story, it means there is a story within a story. Parang sa isang malaking storya, sa loob nun may mga maliliit pa mga stories. Now, what is the main frame of this particular novel? Well, the main frame is that there are a few characters whose aim is to go to a pilgrimage towards the Canterbury Cathedral. So ang mga characters dito ay mga pilgrims. Ang nangyayari ay each of them must tell a story. And halimbawa ako yung unang pilgrim, magkikwento ako. Bukas ikaw naman, bukas siya naman, and then all of those stories combined, compiled, and then there you go, the Canterbury Tales. And I think ang laging lumalabas na Canterbury Tale, isang tale sa Canterbury Tale is yung The Pardoner's Tale. Ayan. And if you want to know more about that, then hanapin lang sa aking YouTube channel, The Pardoner's Tale. Yan, Geoffrey Chaucer. Next is Homer, by all means. He is a Greek writer. Sabi dito, one of the pioneers of Greek and classical literatures. He is famous for his epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Now, mga kaibigan, tandaan natin na si Homer ay lagi rin lumalabas sa board exam for teachers. In fairness naman sa kanya, lagi rin siya na-mention sa board exam for teachers. Kasi I think his 2 epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, are also very important literary masterpieces that everybody must have read. Ayan. So, soon mga kaibigan, I'm preparing for it. I am actually in the process of creating videos about the Iliad and the Odyssey. Pero yun nga mga kaibigan, you have to take note of Homer's works. Ayan. So, epics ng Greece. Next, we have Victor Hugo, mga kaibigan. He is famous for the novel, the end play, novel Les Miserables, and also famous for The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Ayan, Les Miserables, mga kaibigan, is again important for us because it is one of the inspirations of Jose Rizal when he wrote Noli Me Tangere. Ayan, Victor Hugo. We also have Leo Tolstoy, and he wrote War and Peace. And this appeared in the exam, I think, way back. And the question was, what is considered as the greatest novel ever written? So once again, a very debatable question. But for PRC or for the person who wrote or who made the question, for that person, War and Peace is considered as the greatest novel of all time. War and Peace. Also, he wrote Anna Karenina. Yes, ayan, yun yung mga famous na gawa ni Leo Tolstoy. And he also wrote a critique about art. His book is entitled What is Art? Wherein he defined what really art is. Yan, Leo Tolstoy. But in terms of short stories, ang lumalabas sa exam is yung God sees the truth but waits. Ayan. Next, from India, we have Rabindranath Tagore, and he is famous for his work Gitanjali. Now, Gitanjali is actually, ang tanong is, what is Gitanjali in English? Well, Gita means song, and Jali means God. Song of, sorry, not gods. Gita means song, and Jali means offerings. So, its direct translation is Song of Offerings. Rabindranath Tagore. Ayan. Okay, next. We also have Antoine de SaintExupery, and he's famous for his novel, The Little Prince. Now, this is a favorite in terms of the board exam for teachers because one of the lines from the novel is oftentimes used in the exam. Yung line nung fox at saka nung prince, yung parang, ano nga ba, I forgot. Yung what is essential is not seen by the naked eye, only the heart can see rightly. Ayan, so doon po yung galing. Yung only the heart can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the naked eye. Ayan, doon po yung galing sa The Little Prince na ang gumawa ay si Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Ayan. Okay, next. We also have Robert Frost, and he is famous for his poems The Road Not Taken and Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. And my dear friends, before the pandemic, the exam before the pandemic, nagamit po ang tulang Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. Whose woods are these? I think I know. His house is on the village though, di ba? And of course, my dear friends, I think The Road Not Taken is one of the most famous poems in the world. And I think as teachers, we have read this poem when we were still in college, like two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I couldn't travel both, right? Now, how to spot a Robert Frost poem? Well, basically it has certain characteristics. Like number one, oftentimes in most of his works, he would ask you to decide between two things. Anong gusto mo, ito o ito? Like for example, sa Road Not Taken, yung masukal o yung daan na tinatahak ng karamihan. Sa Stopping by the Woods, hihinto ka ba o magpapatuloy? So usually, most of his poems would have that kind of inclination, like choosing between two things. Like for example, in his poem, Fire and Ice. Diba? Ito, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. For what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. So once again, an example of a poem by Frost wherein you have to choose between two concepts that he's actually laying on the table. 'Di ba? So ayan, parang nyo na, oh my goodness, itong tula na to, parang pinipili ako. Most likely, kung talagang di mo alam yung yung writer, edi mag-hypothesize ka na pag may dalawang pinagpipilian, malamang-lamang si Frost ang sagot doon. O, di ba? By the way, here is his picture. Next one is Rudyard Kipling, and he is famous for his fables. And I think the most famous fable of Kipling, or his most famous work, is The Jungle Book. Ito po yung may character na si Mowgli. At si Mowgli is yung naiwan sa gubat at siya inalagaan ng mga wolves, right? You still remember that? The Jungle Book. And I think, of course, I encourage you to read, pero since mag-exam na at wala ka ng time para magbasa, I suggest watch the movie. Marami nang lumabas na movies about the Jungle Book, di ba? Mowgli, tsaka the Jungle Book. Ayan. At kung kabatch kita, kung batang 90s ka, I think in the 90s, merong paghapon may cartoon na ang palabas ay yung Jungle Book. Diba? So si Rudyard Kipling ang gumawa nun. Next is H.G. Wells. And H.G. Wells is famous for writing sci-fi novels such as War of the Worlds and Invisible Man. Now, mga kaibigan, yung War of the Worlds ay in-invade ng alien ang mundo. At ito ay naging pelikula. Si Tom Cruise po yung bida rito. So if you don't have time anymore to read, then by all means, watch the movie War of the Worlds starring Tom Cruise. Pero kung gusto nyo naman ng medyo modern interpretation of it, yung War of the Worlds po ang inspiration ng movie na Independence Day. At yung Invisible Man naman ang inspiration ng Hollow Man. Ayan, H.G. Wells. So pag sci-fi, most likely si H.G. Wells yan. Ayan. Next is George Orwell. And he is most famous for the novel Animal Farm. And also, I think, also 1984. At uh, yung kanyang novel na 1984 ay ang pinaka-favorite ko. Kasi siya yung inspiration nung palabas na Big Brother. So kayo ba ay fan ng Big Brother, ng Pinoy Big Brother? Ayan, kasi mga kaibigan, in the novel 1984, there is a place being governed by somebody who is omnipotent, who is very powerful but unseen. And they don't call him king, they don't call him president, they call him Big Brother. So doon ang galing yung concept ng Big Brother. And my dear friends, sa exam, ang lumalabas ito is yung publication ng libro. Sabi doon, the novel 1984 was published in what particular year? Now, mga kaibigan, if your answer is 1984, mali yun. If your answer is in 1985, mali yun because the novel was published in the year 1948. So, pinagbaliktad ni Orwell yung 8 tsaka yung 4 para magbukang futuristic yung kanyang novel. When he wrote it in the 1940s, he thought that this would happen in the year 1984. Malayong malayo sa kanilang kasalukuyang panahon. And if you would think about it, mga kaibigan, parang nagkakatotoo yung sinasabi ni George Orwell because in his novel, he said that this big brother is only observing everybody through cameras. So everywhere daw, lahat daw ng mga lugar may mga cameras at doon tayo pinapanood ni Big Brother. O, di ba? Interesting. So George Orwell, 1984. We also have Emily Bronte, and she wrote The Wuthering Heights, mga kaibigan. Naku, malolobat na ata ang laptop ko, so I have to cut this short. Pero I promise to create a video about it pa rin. Itutuloy natin to. Pero i-browse natin yung mga next na mga authors natin. We have Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights. We also have Edgar Allan Poe. We will discuss him next meeting or next video. We have Chinua Achebe. We also have Dante Alighieri, yung mga natitira pa natin i-discuss. Si Giovanni Boccaccio, and I think the last person to be discussed is Jose Rizal. So yeah, in the meantime, medyo I have to say goodbye to you kasi medyo low-bat na yung laptop ko. Baka hindi ko to ma-save. So I'm gonna see you again in my next video. In the meantime, thank you for watching and bye everybody. See ya. Bye.